bacteria growth, then you put it back out on the carvery.
Not very often, no, but some of the time, yes, we do.
Over the many years of Kitchen Nightmares, Gordon Ramsay has encountered a wide array of characters. Chefs that just seemed completely unaware of the poor state of their kitchens and their lack of cooking abilities. Here are the top 10 delusional chefs that stressed Gordon Ramsay out on Kitchen Nightmares. Disgusting dining.
Let's be honest. You can't call yourself a chef if you serve that.
When he arrived at the Seascape Inn in New York, Gordon found one of the dirtiest kitchens he'd ever seen. Scrapable layers of dirt and grime, some old and sour meat, moldy sauce, which Gordon ate for lunch, and just overall outrageous hygiene. Gordon was going mad, insulting the owner, butting heads with the chef, and calling this whole thing a kitchen hazard. He even decides to close the restaurant for a couple of days to do a much-needed cleaning of the place. He is in complete disbelief. But that wasn't the worst part. He was also met with one of the most stubborn and lazy chefs he had ever encountered, head chef Doug. Completely aware that his kitchen was disgusting and not caring in the slightest, Chef Doug does not accept any of Gordon's help and refuses to prove him right, saying, "I think he needs to back off."
Stay out of my territory.
Chef Charles was also part of the problem, joining Doug with his negative and stubborn attitude. Unable to reason with them, Gordon goes to the owner Peter and tells him if he wants his help, he needs to fire both of them. "I can't fix your business with those two schmucks in there." And so they were let go, and the business picked right back up. The grilled Caesar salad.
Right now, it's worse than hospital food.
Chef Jorge's grilled Caesar salad from Park's Edge restaurant in Atlanta is easily one of the most iconic dishes that was ever served on Kitchen Nightmares. Gordon was so unsettled with the thought of grilling an entire head of romaine lettuce and calling it a salad that as soon as he received his unusual plate, he had to get up and ask the entire restaurant if anyone had ever experienced anything like this. And unsurprisingly, no one had.
You have got to get real.
After chowing down a few bites of the wet and improperly washed lettuce, he just knew the brilliant mind behind this dish wasn't very experienced. Ramsay simply didn't know how to deal with the stubborn chef, who proudly claimed his grilled salad was going to be a big hit, exclaiming, "It's grilled lettuce! I mean, you can't go wrong." Gordon didn't understand how Chef Jorge could be so oblivious and think that his food was, as he so nicely put it, edible. This salad was not only a weird and random idea, but also a poorly executed one. Chef Mike, the microwave extraordinaire.
What in the hell was that?
When Gordon first stepped foot inside the doors of El Greco in Austin, Texas, he was nicely surprised to see a well-taken-care-of establishment. But after ordering food off the menu, he quickly realized that the business failures didn't stem from the establishment, but from the food quality itself. And although head chef Jake was technically the one to blame for the poor food preparation, it seemed that most of the staff was ready to place all the blame on Chef Mike, the kitchen microwave.
He's deeply embarrassed. Cannot believe.
Almost all of the dishes in the restaurant would, at one point or another, come in contact with Chef Mike, which exasperated Gordon, telling them they would be effed if they didn't have that microwave. Although there were other more pressing issues plaguing the restaurant, Chef Mike was hilarious and gave an entertaining spin on an unfortunate situation. In one of the best scenes in Kitchen Nightmares history, Gordon Ramsay fires Chef Mike by throwing him from the window of a 3-story building, effectively destroying him in the process. This is by far one of the most gruesome send-offs of a chef ever. Frozen food fanatics.
And it's cold.
Almost nothing irritates Gordon Ramsay more than when the chef of a restaurant blames the customers for not liking the food. When Gordon visited Bella Luna in Pennsylvania, he was surprised to hear that the supposedly biggest problem with the restaurant was the customers themselves. The owner, Rosario, who is also the chef's mother, complains that the community does not know about fresh, authentic Italian food because they're just used to being served frozen food at other restaurants. restaurants. Gordon seemed confused by the owner's clear inability to take responsibility, and after inspecting the kitchen, he discovered that the customer is, in fact, always right, and for good reason.
This is one of the worst kitchens I've ever been in.
Boxes of moldy produce, frozen meat, and mussels all point to the opposite of promised freshness. Rosario is in plain denial as she insists they buy fresh, even though Gordon is emptying the freezer full of not-so-fresh frozen chicken. Gordon calls her out for claiming they sell fresh food and then not living up to that promise. Slipping standards.
How can you eat that? If you knew they were off, why didn't you say?
When Gordon arrived at Mama Maria's Italian Ristorante in Brooklyn, New York, he had a bit of difficulty actually locating the head chef. In fact, it seemed that most of the main decision-making and leadership responsibilities had been left to the owner, John, who was rather checked out when it came to the restaurant's needs. Choosing to focus on its sister store, Sal's Pizzeria, Mama Maria's had been left neglected by John, both aesthetically and in terms of the kitchen's slipping standards. With chefs Oscar and Valentino in charge of the kitchen at Mama Maria's, it soon became obvious that the kitchen had been left in complete disarray, to the point where the dinner service needed to be halted when an ambulance was called in.
That was bad.
In just one dinner service, Gordon witnessed a vegetarian being served a pork meat sauce in which she found a bone, and a gentleman ate a lobster dinner that had him checked on by paramedics after locking himself in the restaurant bathroom. Yikes. The Early Bird Special.
The carvery. It was dry, it was hideous, it was overcooked, and it tasted of nothing.
When Gordon arrived at the Priory, a restaurant in the UK, he was immediately shocked by the older clientele the restaurant attracted. This seemed extremely bizarre and unusual for Chef Scott, a young and passionate individual. The main reason why the elderly seemed to like the Priory so much was because of the cheap prices and, inevitably, the cheap food. The endless trays of food being served buffet style weren't exactly prepared with any love and care. Get me out of here! Not only was it bland and inedible, but the real horror was behind the kitchen doors. He ends up condemning the whole kitchen after raiding it and finding the most disturbing and disgusting things. Old meat, chewy raw fries, and overall outrageously low hygiene standards. As Gordon tries to explain the situation to the staff, saying how embarrassing and disgusting it was, the staff doesn't even seem to care. He called the staff lazy, clueless, and just oblivious to everything that was happening. Considering the establishment closed a few short years after the episode aired, this chef was delusional mostly for not accepting Gordon's assistance. Changes of a chef.
There's no halfway house here, yeah? Change or die.
Considering this next chef rated his own cooking abilities a 9 out of 10 when Chef Ramsay asked, you would expect he would have the skills to back it up with a decent meal. But alas, according to Gordon's experience, it didn't measure up even in the slightest. Surrounded by the terrible-smelling dining room, supposedly due to moldy carpeting, Gordon orders some food, hopeful this will at least be good. The feast starts with the watery, bland linguine and rubbery shrimp. It's nowhere near a 9. Then, much to the waitress's embarrassment, they serve him the chicken Murphy, which looks horrible and unappetizing. A few bites are just about enough to create some discomfort and make him dread the next meal. The steak Nelly arrives, which Gordon sneakily spits out onto his plate. Gordon says it tastes like burnt charcoal and feels like a barbecue in his mouth. But the craziest part of Ramsay's dining experience is not just the food, but the completely delusional world the chef seems to live in. He refuses to admit he didn't cook his food properly and thinks so highly of himself he doesn't take criticism. He calls himself a master of the grill and perfectionist. Unfortunately, despite hard work from all the staff, including a positive change and outlook from chef and owner Mike, the restaurant closed in 2012. The meatball mishap.
What the?
You've been meatballed.
When Tatiana took over ownership of Charlie's Italian Bistro, she knew she was inexperienced, but put her faith in the longtime head chef of over a decade, Casimiro. Unfortunately for Tatiana, this may have been one of her biggest mistakes when taking over the restaurant. Firstly, the food they served Gordon is prepackaged, frozen, under-seasoned, overcooked, and undercooked all at the same time. This is simply unfathomable. After witnessing Chef Casimiro's obvious lack of skills, Gordon asks him to have a head-to-head meatball-making challenge with the restaurant's sous chef. Casimiro completely fails, at which point Gordon becomes increasingly concerned over the chef's technical abilities. If he can't even cook a meatball, how is he going to cook anything else? The final straw for Gordon was the slow and dreadful dinner service.
Darling, crying's not fun. Homer's fun.
After receiving criticism, Casimiro completely shuts down and refuses to cook any more meals or listen to what Gordon has to say. Tatiana's last hopes were crushed as she had to make the incredible, heart-wrenching decision to let Casimiro go, even though he had been working there for over 14 years. Pantalone Pete.
You don't taste that?
I do now, yeah.
The next chef on this list is one whose delusion was entirely related to clinging to the past. Head Chef Pete and owner of Pantalones in Denver, Colorado, was once given wide praise when it came to his incredible pizzeria and delicious cooking abilities. Unfortunately, over 20 years later, despite dwindling customers, loss of business, and declining food quality, Pete believed that the restaurant was still in its former glory. He was completely clueless as to why the business was failing. The restaurant's biggest issue was the massively oversized pizzas made by Pete himself. Stuck in the mindset that more is better, Pete was completely unwilling to change his pizza into a more modern thin crust style that is popular today. Even after Gordon shows Pete his pizza losing to a frozen pizza in a blind taste test, he still doesn't want to change the recipe. Only after arguing with his family members and realizing the stress it's causing is he finally willing to make changes.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
Thanks to Pete's acceptance of new pizza styles and Gordon's assistance, Pantalones is still serving up some of the best pizza in Denver today. Stubborn from the start.
Business doesn't just come and sit on your lap. You've got to go looking for it. And if you don't, you're gonna fail.
When Gordon visited the Secret Garden in Moore Park, California, he was excited to try the food cooked up by the French head chef Michel Bardavid. Serving some of that French charm, or arrogance, to Chef Ramsay was a piece of cake for the chef. He was extremely confident in his culinary skills and didn't think anything could be bettered. As in anything. Despite the food being tasteless, weird, and badly done, Michel still thinks that it's just a matter of opinion, which, understandably, drives Gordon mad.
Where's your respect?
Michel is described by his staff as arrogant and is said to not take criticism very well. From the moment Gordon arrived until after he left, Chef Michel was so cocky and closed-minded, it was impossible for Gordon to make any real valuable changes. Although improvements to the dining room decor can be an easy fix that can help to improve the dining experience, Michel was even uncertain about these renovations. Sadly, unable to take advantage of the talent within the restaurant, and after reverting to old menu items, the restaurant eventually closed for good. Tune in to more great videos. Just tap or click. First time here? Then leave us a comment, hit that subscribe button, and ring that notification bell.